The sheriff taped the notice to the front door, and I watched from across the street with my keys still in my hand. That house had my childhood bedroom, my pencil marks on the pantry wall, and the kitchen table where my father once demanded I pay him $15,000 in fake rent. A month ago, I would have cried seeing it end like that. But that morning, I only thought one thing. Consequences finally found the right address. My name is Nora Ellis, and the house across the street was the place I spent most of my life trying to save. Not because it was beautiful. It was not. The siding was faded, the front steps leaned to the left, and the upstairs hallway always smelled like old carpet after it rained. But it was home. Or at least I thought it was. There were pencil marks inside the pantry door where my mother measured my height every birthday until I was 13. There was a crack in the kitchen tile from the year my brother dropped a frozen turkey and blamed me. There was a maple tree out back where I used to sit when my parents fought about money and pretended they were only discussing bills. That house held my childhood, and for years my family used that fact like a leash. I moved back there after the company I worked for cut half its staff. I was 31, exhausted and embarrassed. I had savings but not enough to sign a lease in a hurry. My mother said, "Come home for a while. Family helps family." I wanted to believe her. That was my first mistake. My father, Richard, ran a small roofing business. He had always been proud in the loudest possible way. He could lose money on a job and still call himself the smartest man in the room. My mother, Elaine, was quieter but colder. She could make cruelty sound like planning. My younger brother, Mason, was 27 and still living at home without paying for anything except his gym membership and streaming apps. And my Uncle Dean was the kind of man who arrived at family dinners empty-handed and left with leftovers, but still had opinions about everyone else's work ethic. I had been home for 9 days when they held the dinner. Chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and 4 people waiting for me to sit down. That should have warned me too. My family never waited for me. My father cleared his throat before I even picked up my fork. Then he slapped a stapled packet onto the table. "This is what you owe us," he said. I stared at the top page. It was an invoice. My name was typed across the top. Under it were charges for rent, utilities, household disruption, emotional strain, driveway use, laundry access, and something called family inconvenience. The total was $15,000. For 9 days. I looked up, waiting for someone to laugh. No one did. My mother lifted her wine glass and said, "We are being generous by not charging a security deposit." Mason snorted into his drink. Uncle Dean nodded like a judge. "Adults pay their way," he said. "Maybe this will finally teach you accountability." That was rich coming from a man who had borrowed money from my mother for 11 years and called it temporary every time. My father tapped the packet with 2 fingers. "First payment is due Friday. $1,500. After that, 13% interest each month." 13%, I said. My mother smiled. "Real landlords charge fees. You are not my landlords." My father leaned back. "No, we are the people who kept a roof over your head when life got hard." I looked at Mason. He was holding his phone low, angled toward me. Recording. That was when I stopped feeling shocked. Shock is soft. It makes you ask why. What I felt then was sharper. Because at the bottom of the invoice, almost hidden in the footer, was a tiny print shop timestamp. The packet had been printed 12 days before I moved back in. They had planned the ambush before I ever carried a suitcase through the door. I looked at my father. "You made a bill for me before I lived here." His jaw tightened. My mother said, "Do not twist this." Mason laughed. "She always does that. Makes herself the victim." Then he turned his phone slightly, making sure my face was in frame. I could already imagine the caption. "Freeloader finally gets charged." There is a kind of betrayal that does not explode. Clicks. Something inside you moves one notch, and suddenly the room looks different. The table was no longer a dinner table. It was a stage. My father had the role of stern provider. My mother had the role of reasonable planner. Mason had the role of amused witness. Uncle Dean had the role of moral authority, though he had never earned it. And I had been assigned the role they always gave me. The problem? I folded the invoice once. Then again. My father said, "Leave that here." I put it in my bag. "No," I said. "You gave it to me." My mother's face hardened. If you walk away from this conversation, do not expect everyone to pretend nothing happened. I almost smiled. They had printed a fake debt before I arrived, staged dinner like a trial, and filmed my reaction. But I was the one pretending. Mason said, "Everyone pays rent, Nora." I looked at him. "Then show me yours." His smile disappeared. Just for a second. Long enough. That was when I knew this was never about fairness. It was about me. I went upstairs to pack. My old room was not really my room anymore. Mason had moved his extra sneakers into my closet. My desk was gone. The framed certificate from my college debate final had been taken off the wall. In the hallway, someone had stuck a yellow note on the family photo. Over my face, Mason had drawn a $sign. It was childish. It still hurt. I packed 2 bags and left before dessert. My father blocked the front door. "Where do you think you are going?" "Somewhere I am not charged." Emotional strain by the plate. My mother folded her arms. "You are proving our point." "No," I said. "I am refusing the part you wrote for me." That night, I slept in my car behind a closed pharmacy. I wish I could say I felt strong. I did not. I felt cold, stupid, and ashamed. Not because I believed I owed them $15,000. Because part of me still wondered if I had done something to deserve being spoken to that way. That is what long-term family guilt does. It makes you audit your own pain before you question their cruelty. The next morning I called my friend Tessa. She was the only person who knew the full history, not the polished version my family told at holidays. We met at a diner off Route 9. I handed her the invoice. She read it once, then again. When she got to family inconvenience, she put it down and stared at me. "Nora," she said, "this is not a bill. This is a trap." "I know." "No. I mean, it was designed to make you react. The video, the audience, the interest rate, all of it. They wanted a scene." She worked in payroll compliance, which meant she had no patience for messy numbers or emotional fraud. She tapped the timestamp. "They printed this before you moved in. Start there." Then she said something I wrote down on a napkin. "Do not argue feelings with people who brought paperwork. Bring better paperwork." So I did. For the next 5 days, I became quiet in a way my family would have called sulking. It was not sulking. It was inventory. I went through old bank statements, screenshots, texts, credit card records, email confirmations, receipts I had saved and forgotten, and every file opened a memory. When I was 19, my father underbid 2 roofing jobs and nearly lost the business. My mother called me crying from the grocery store parking lot. I sold my laptop, the one I needed for school, and a camera I had saved all summer to buy. I gave her the money in cash. She said, "Your father cannot know. It would break him." So I protected his pride while he later called me irresponsible. When I was 24, their property taxes were overdue. I transferred $8,600 from my savings. My mother texted, "We will never forget this." They forgot. When I was 27, their furnace died in January. My father said a real man would handle it, then asked if I could put the emergency replacement on my credit card until spring. Spring came, then summer, then 3 more years. When Mason wrecked my mother's car and their insurance deductible was due, I paid half because my mother said he was depressed and could not handle more stress. Mason used my money, then later called me dead weight. None of those moments had contracts. That was the problem. In families like mine, debt only counts when they are collecting it. What you give becomes duty. What they take becomes forgotten. And when you finally stop, they call it betrayal. There is no receipt for emotional labor. No invoice for protecting a father's ego. No signed statement for nights you lay awake wondering if your parents would lose the house. But when the people you help start rewriting history, evidence becomes a form of memory. So I made my own spreadsheet. Date, amount, reason, proof, property tax, furnace, insurance deductible, emergency payroll loan, grocery money, car repair, mortgage gap. Every row had a document attached. The total came to $19,480. That was only what I could prove. I did not include the laptop. I did not include the camera. I did not include the years of being the quiet backup plan. Tessa reviewed the folder and said, "Good. Now do not threaten. Present. I texted my father. Tomorrow. 7 o'clock. Kitchen. Everyone there. He replied within 2 minutes. Bring your first payment. I laughed for the first time in days. Not because it was funny, because he still thought he was the one holding the bill. The next evening, I walked into that kitchen in my work clothes, carrying a blue folder. My father sat at the head of the table. My mother sat beside him. Mason had his phone out. Uncle Dean was there too, of course. Some people can smell humiliation from another zip code. My father held out his hand. Envelope. I placed the folder on the table. What is this? He asked. An answer. He opened it. The first page was my spreadsheet. His face changed before he could stop it. My mother leaned closer. Mason stopped recording. I had expected that. People who love public shame rarely enjoy documented truth. I walked them through each line. The property tax transfer. The furnace charge. The insurance deductible. The payroll gap. The text where my mother promised repayment. The message where my father wrote, I will make it right when the next contract clears. The screenshot where Mason said, Thanks for helping, Mom. Seriously. You saved us. He stared at that one like the words belonged to someone else. When I finished, the room was quiet. Then my father did what he always did when cornered. He got loud. This is manipulative. I picked up his invoice and placed it beside my spreadsheet. No, I said. This is manipulative. Mine has receipts. My mother said, Families should not keep score. I looked at her. You printed a scoreboard before I moved in. Uncle Dean cleared his throat. Well, maybe everyone needs to calm down. I turned to him. You called me a freeloader while eating food you did not buy, in a house you do not pay for. You can sit this one out. He became very interested in his napkin. I placed one more page on the table. It was a statement Tessa had helped me draft. It did not demand money. It did not forgive debt. It simply acknowledged that I had provided documented financial support to my parents over several years, totaling at least $19,480, and that the rent invoice had been prepared before I moved back into the home. My mother read it and went pale. You cannot force us to sign this. I cannot, I said. But I can keep copies of everything. Including Mason's video. Mason looked at my father. My father looked at my mother. My mother picked up the pen first. Her hand shook. My father signed next, pressing so hard the pen tore the paper. Mason refused until I reminded him he had posted about me online. Then he signed a short statement confirming he had recorded me without asking, and had shared a caption calling me a freeloader. Uncle Dean said, So what now? I put the papers back in my folder. Now you live with what you wrote. As I reached the door, my father said, You are really going to walk out over paperwork? I turned around. No. I am walking out because you mistook access to me for ownership. For 1 week I heard nothing. No apology. No demand. No family group chat lecture. Just silence. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt like weather before a storm. Then at 1:17 in the morning my phone rang. Mason. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I answered. His voice was thin. Nora. Mom opened certified mail. There is a foreclosure notice on the house. I sat up. What? Dad is losing it. Mom is crying. I do not know what to do. For a few seconds I said nothing. I remembered the invoice. The $sign on my face. The word freeloader. The way they had planned my humiliation. A colder version of me would have hung up. Maybe that version would have been right. But boundaries are not always built in one clean moment. Sometimes you need to return once, not because they deserve rescue, but because you need to see whether truth can survive when they finally need you. I drove over. Not to save them blindly. Not to become the family emergency fund again. I went because I needed one final answer. Could they be honest when lying no longer helped? When I arrived, the house was bright in the middle of the night. My mother's mascara had run down both cheeks. My father looked 10 years older. Mason sat at the table, suddenly less amused by financial consequences. Uncle Dean was there too, wearing sweatpants in panic. The foreclosure notice lay open on the table. I read it twice. They were behind by 4 months. Not 1. 4. There had already been a warning letter, then a missed cure date, then a failed payment arrangement. My father had hidden all of it. I looked at him. How long? He rubbed his face. Nora, this is not the time for blame. That means long enough. My mother whispered. We were embarrassed. I almost laughed. They were embarrassed about foreclosure, but not embarrassed to hand their daughter a fake invoice in front of an audience. I asked for bank statements. My father resisted. I stood up. He handed them over. For 3 hours I sorted the mess. The roofing business had been bleeding money for months. My father had taken advances from clients and used them to cover old debts. My mother had emptied the emergency account and never refilled it. Mason had received regular transfers labeled relocation help. Relocation to where, I asked. No one answered. I found a separate savings account with $12,000 in it. My mother said it was for Mason's move to Nashville. I stared at her. You had money set aside for Mason to move, while the house was 4 months behind? He needed a fresh start, she said. And I needed an invoice? No one spoke. That was my answer. Still, I made calls the next morning. I contacted the lender. I reviewed the reinstatement terms. I built a payment calendar. There was one possible path to stop the foreclosure, but it required exact payments, certified funds, and complete honesty. I told them that. I said, if you miss one date, hide one account, or blame me for one consequence, I am done. My father nodded. My mother nodded. Mason nodded. I did not believe them, but I gave them the chance. That is the part some people do not understand. The last chance was not for them. It was for me. So I would not spend years wondering whether I abandoned a family that might have changed. 1 week later, the first reinstatement payment was due. I reminded my father 3 times that it needed to be certified funds. He said, I know how payments work. He sent a personal check. Late. The lender rejected it. When I confronted him, he snapped, well, maybe if you had paid what you owed us, we would not be in this position. There it was. The last lie. Not because he believed it. Because blaming me was easier than meeting himself. My mother joined in softly. You have always been difficult when we need support, Mason said. You made everything worse by turning this into a courtroom. I looked at all 3 of them. And finally, there was no pain left in the place where guilt used to live. Only clarity. You hid the mortgage crisis, I said to my father. You helped draft a fake invoice, I said to my mother. You filmed me and mocked me online, I said to Mason. Then I still came here, reviewed your documents, called your lender, made a plan, and gave you one condition. Tell the truth. My father looked away. Picked up my folder. You did not need help. You needed a scapegoat. My mother started crying. Can you fix it? I thought about that question. Not the words. The assumption inside them. Can you absorb this? Can you carry us? Can you be hurt and still useful? I said no. Not the way you mean. My father slammed his hand on the table. So you are going to let us lose the house? No, I said. You already did. That was the moment I stopped being their emergency fund. I moved the last of my things out that night. The box from my old closet. The winter coat I had left by the back door. The childhood photos my mother had not thrown away. On my way out, I opened the pantry door and looked at the pencil marks. Nora age 7. Nora age 8. Nora age 9. For a moment I touched the old lines. Then I closed the door. Some places can hold your memories and still not deserve your future. 3 weeks later, the sheriff's notice went up. My parents told people I had abandoned them. They said I had money and refused to help. They said I let bitterness destroy the family home. The old me would have panicked. The old me would have called everyone to explain. The old me would have tried to manage the story so no one thought badly of me. But I was done auditioning for fairness. I posted one calm statement in the neighborhood community group. No insults. No rant. Just dates. The fake rent invoice. The print shop timestamp. The signed acknowledgement. The bank transfer records. The foreclosure timeline. The rejected payment. The separate savings account for Mason. Then I logged off. Truth does not need to scream when it has documents. By evening, my father had lost 2 business referrals. My mother stepped down from the church finance committee. Mason deleted his posts. Uncle Dean called me cruel, then asked if I could remove the part about him eating dinner while calling me a freeloader. I did not respond. A month later, I saw my parents in their new apartment. Small place. Second floor. No maple tree. My father looked smaller without the house around him. My mother looked tired in a way makeup could not soften. For a second I felt the old pull. The daughter reflex. The part of me trained to scan their faces and ask what needed fixing. Then my mother said, "Can we start over?" I wanted to believe her. But starting over without truth is just giving the same people a clean page to write the same lie. So I said, "You wanted me to learn responsibility. This is me learning it." She cried. My father stared at the floor. Mason texted later, "Hope you are happy." I was not happy. That is what people get wrong about boundaries. They think choosing yourself feels like celebration. Sometimes it feels like grief with better posture. I grieved the house. I grieved the parents I kept trying to earn. I grieved the version of my brother who might have defended me instead of recording me. I even grieved the girl who sold her laptop at 19 and thought love would remember. But I did not regret leaving. Because a home is not sacred just because you grew up there. Blood does not excuse exploitation. And protecting your peace is not selfish when someone keeps trying to turn your love into a debt. If I could speak to that 19-year-old version of me, I would not tell her she was wrong to help. She was kind. She was brave. She did what she thought love required. But I would tell her this. Do not confuse kindness with a lifetime contract. Do not let people call your sacrifice normal just because they benefited from it. Do not keep rescuing people who only reach for you when consequences knock. The sheriff's notice stayed on the door for weeks. Every time I drove past, I felt less pain. Not because the memories disappeared. Because they finally belonged to the past instead of controlling my present. That house was where I learned to walk. Where I learned to apologize first. Where I learned to make myself useful so no one would leave. But it was also where I learned the lesson that set me free. Love should never arrive as an invoice. And family should never charge interest on survival. So if the people who were supposed to protect you turn your loyalty into a bill, ask yourself one thing. Are they asking for help? Or are they asking you to pay the price for consequences they earned? Because forgiveness is a choice. But so is freedom. And sometimes the most responsible thing you can do is let the notice stay on the door. Disclaimer. This video is created for the sole purpose of entertainment. All situations, characters, and stories in this video are fictional and are built entirely using artificial intelligence technology. We hope you have a relaxing time.